Five. Okay. Hey, everyone. If you can hear us, let us know in the comments. This is our first time trying to do this, but I thought this was a good day to try something new that could hopefully be helpful. So if you hear us okay, let us know in the comments. We should be able to see those right here. But as soon as we get one confirmation about that, we'll get started. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So I'm here today with Brooke, and she's a friend of mine. But in addition to that, she's a private practice counselor in Indianapolis. She's the author of the Bully book, a workbook for kids coping with bullies, the Lost book, and a contributing author to many places. Plus, she's authored some adoption materials, and she was a founding member of MLJ Adoptions, where she served as VP of Social Services for 7 years. She's a young professional advisory board member for the Villages, and I mean, she has a very impressive resume. So I thought Brooke was a great person to call on today when so many of you guys basically filled our inbox and just said this would be a really good time for Indy with Kids to help parents. And we're not a parenting website. We don't do that typically because I'm not an expert and I'm the one kind of running the website. So since people did reach out and specifically ask for help on how to talk to their kids, how to speak to their children about gun violence in schools, about school shootings and so forth, I thought it's time to bring in an expert. So Brooke is here today, and we will share some information if after this broadcast you need some further information on maybe meeting with Brooke or having your children meet with Brooke or getting information about her workbooks about bullying and such, then we'll make sure that we leave that information for you. But hello, Brooke.
Hi.
So,
good to see you.
Good to see you too. So today, obviously a very high stress, emotional day in the Indianapolis area. We had a school shooting in Noblesville. And I think that we've all almost kind of been waiting for this to happen. Like we've seen it happen across our nation, and we just thought, oh, it can't happen here, or will it? And today it did happen. And in the past when it's happened, I know my children are pretty young. So because it's not really in our backyard, it isn't something that we've necessarily spoken about, but it is in our backyard now. And for so many of our readers and our viewers, it is in their backyard. So tell us anything right now.
Well, I think the first step in talking with our kids about that is that we as parents tell them first, that we don't let them hear it on the news or the radio or from somebody else, which that could be more intimidating, but just kind of sitting down, letting them know that something sad happened today so that they hear it from you first. And then also not leaving the news or the radio on. The repetition is not going to be helpful for your kids. So this 24-hour news cycle is really anxiety producing for most of us, but especially for our kids.
So at what age, like, let's say they do hear something, whether, like, I know our kids are out of school now. So I thank God that, you know, they're not going to hear it from a stranger, and there's a chance that they won't hear it. But let's say that we do want to be the first one to tell them. What age is it appropriate? And I mean, what age do you bring that up?
I mean, if you think your kid is going to have any concerns about this happening to them, if they go to school, then it probably is a good time to talk to them. Even the kindergartners, even.
And so I think you might be frozen. We'll find out in a second. But if you can still hear me, if we do have a kindergartner, because I know so many of our readers and our viewers do have younger children, what's a good way to bring it up to a kindergartner? Uh-oh. Brooke. All right. So we're going to wait for Brooke to come back and be online with us. But leave some questions in the comments below if you have specific questions, or if there's something that you want to say, or if you have some advice. We would love to get your input as parents. How old are your kids? What are you saying to your kids at this point? All right, we do have Brooke back. So, Brooke, my question was, if we do have a kindergartner, what with the very young children, and we're going to allow our readers to also ask some questions below. But if we have the young child, how do we say something to a kindergartner?
I think, right, you just want to choose the language that they can understand, and different kids understand at different levels, but letting them know that, hey, I just want to tell you about something sad or something scary that happened today. I just want you to hear it from me so I can answer any questions that you have. And you might just say that, at a school today, a kid took a gun to school and hurt somebody. And I wanted you to know that happened. And then just let them see what questions they come up with.
And then,
or even more frightening if they don't. My kid didn't have any questions.
Maybe it's just kind of hard to process sometimes, I think. I don't know. Tell us if, so I have a child that suffers from severe anxiety, and school is a little bit on the list, but, I imagine even a kid that doesn't suffer from anxiety at this point would have some very anxious feelings about returning to school. I know a lot of the kids in our city, and especially in that area, are still in school for another week. So if you have a child that suffers from anxiety of going to school now, what do we do?
Right. Well, be very patient. We're going to want to, have the conversation, but then also really just slow down your whole schedule, really get back to this secure home base where you are the base, the foundation, that you've got their security wrapped up, and then work on soothing them, and different things that will help soothe them. And then I would be real patient with them if they're going to, whether they're going to be extra anxious about going to school or they're showing some regression, just being really patient in this time period. It's the last week of school. The school won't like me to say this, but I would say if your kid really doesn't want to go and you can make that work, maybe make that work. Is it really worth the fear and anxiety right now? But talking to them, of course, about that we're going to have to go back to school. We can't, unless you are capable of homeschooling all your kids.
Yeah, but the situation could happen anywhere.
Right.
Elijah Cameron says, I have a special needs child and teach using books. Do you know of any kid-friendly books on this topic? And I know this is kind of putting you on the spot. And so if we don't have an answer right now, then it's fine to follow up later. But I think that's a really good question, not just for special needs children, but it's a really good way as a parent to kind of look at big issues.
It is. I love using books for kids and for adults. I don't know a book on this topic specifically, so we might have to just do a little Google searching and see or Amazon searching and see what looks good.
Yeah. Elijah, I just did a quick search and I only really found fiction for adults about school shootings. So we will get back to you. We'll find some resources for you. That's a great question. If any of you guys have questions out there for Brooke about sharing with your kids about the news today, if you have specific age groups or specific situations, we'd love to have your question in the comments, and we'll share that with everyone. But Brooke, you mentioned that your child didn't have a reaction when you shared today. And so is your child done with school for the year at this point, or are there still days?
I was very thankful that when I got the news today, that I was like, okay, I don't have to deal with this again.
Yeah, because I feel like that's going to be the thing for people that have kids that go back to school on Monday. So it's a little bit, I don't know. I can't imagine right now. So is there, this is all new. And like I said, I'm not an expert, which is why I brought you on. But is there any merit to coming up with like an escape plan, like at least in theory with your child, while you're processing this and sharing, like if this were to happen at your school, because we do that a lot with so many other disasters, and I know they practice at school, but as parents, I don't think we've been educated on what they're teaching the kids at school.
Right. I mean, we may need to be following up with the schools to make those kinds of drills available for us so that we know what's going on. If you have an older child, you might ask them, if this happens at your school, what are you supposed to do? And go through that with them, and then figuring out like what can be added to that. You know, you don't want your kid not following the protocol because they came up with another plan at home out of their imagination. You still want them to, you know, follow the teacher's instructions because it's the best way to keep them safe in that moment.
We have another question. This is from Paula. She says, how should parents with guns in their homes introduce children to gun safety? Do they tell their kids that guns are in the home? And I think this would be a very good question for right now, because let's say you haven't discussed it with your kids yet, and then you bring it up at this point. It kind of makes you look like a bad guy. I mean, what should parents do? Is this the time for it?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is important is that right now that we're going to focus with our kids on empathy and understanding, and not this us versus them kind of mentality. So whether you have guns in your home, you're a gun rights activist, or you are just on the exact opposite side of that, we really need to avoid teaching our kids that something is bad or wrong, that these differences of opinion, not that this other person is bad, not that this other person is wrong, because that mentality is actually a huge risk factor in the violent behavior. So our political arguments on gun laws and gun safety and keeping our kids safe, we have to be careful that doesn't then create just another like us versus them. And those are really dangerous things. So if there's guns in the home, this isn't my area of expertise, but you need to let your kids know that these things are off limits, that if you see this, that you go get an adult, not that you touch it. There's all kinds of programs like Eddie Eagle that's gun safety for children. So letting them know the rules, know what that is, so that you're not having accidents. You have to take some of the curiosity out of it, or so that they don't try to sneak and see what it is when they're not supposed to be or when you're not around.
I like that. Okay, so we have another question that came in through a different avenue, and it says, what if I'm highly emotional and having a hard time talking to my own child? So the parent, it seems, is the emotional one and struggling to do it. What can be done?
That is a great question, because you want to be really honest with your kids about your feelings, but being able to keep it pretty matter of fact. If your kid sees you overly emotional, then that could be frightening for them, because remember, they need you to be the secure base. They need you to be their safety. And so if they feel like you need protection or you need caretaking, then you can't take care of them. So that's when you have to take care of yourself first. That whole put your own oxygen mask on first. And whether that's, taking some time to process through it, talking with a friend, calling a therapist, going for a run, whatever you need to do. Or, maybe if you have a co-parent, to let them kind of take the lead on this conversation.
I like that. It's too bad. It's like hard to outsource. We're so used to outsourcing. If your kid gets lice, you send them somewhere. If your kid gets this, but outsourcing those emotional parent situations, like, oh, I wish I could dial it in sometimes for other people, but it is hard. Okay. And then we have another question that came through Messenger, and it says, And this is actually, it made me think of you because you said your son didn't want to discuss it. What are other signs that my child is struggling if they don't really want to talk about it? I think that's a really good question.
Right. Because they may not want to talk about it. They may not know how to talk about it. Right. So any form of acting out is really an expression of emotion. Right. I remember being at a conference once, and the speaker was talking about a child who was experiencing enuresis. And one of the ways that they kind of addressed that was like, you know what? Pardon the language here, but this is what he said. He's like, thank you for letting me know just how pissed you are about this situation. Right? And that really any kind of acting out is a form of expressing their emotion. They just don't have the words. And so sometimes as parents, we have to be detectives trying to figure out what's going on and what's really behind it.
Yep, I agree. Let's see. I'm trying to look at all these questions. Here's another one. If you guys have any questions, I appreciate some people want to do this privately, and so I'm trying to honor that and put these up. But if you have any questions that you are willing to ask publicly, go ahead and drop them in the comments below because I can just show that. But otherwise, it just takes me a second to type all of them in. Okay, so this is a good one. Sorry, I have like a little bit of tears in my eyes. Okay. With social media and kids being on computers, shouldn't we all just talk about it? Okay, so because we mentioned that maybe you don't need to discuss it, but be the first one if there's any chance your kid's going to see it. So this is a good point. Like with social media and kids being on computers, shouldn't we all just talk about it? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, if you think your kid's going to hear it some other way, they should probably hear it from you first, right? To have you as their secure base, to be there when they hear this thing that could be really frightening or upsetting, right?
And let's say you didn't get to your kid first because they're coming home today. What do we do? Right.
When I picked my kid up at school today, I was ready. Like we hadn't gotten an email from the school. I didn't know if they talked about it, if they hadn't. And then, okay, they clearly haven't because he's talking about other things. So we're going to have to bring it up. But if they've already heard it, that's another excellent time that you need to bring it up so that they know they can talk to you about it. And even if my kiddo didn't want to ask any questions right away, that it may be something that I bring up again later and just check in. Like, are there any more questions? Is there anything else you thought about? Or maybe dropping sometimes what we call like pebbles, just like one sentence that you kind of leave there and see if there's any ripples. So for the kids who are going back to school, Sunday night, you might say like, wow, I can imagine that you might be a little nervous going to school tomorrow. And you just have to say it. You don't have to ask if you're right or not, because they'll tell you. And at least then they know that you are willing and able to talk about it. Is you just bring up little things, drop something in there, and just wait.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, let me okay. Whoa. All right. Sorry, I fear your feedback. Okay. How often should we bring it up again?
Oh, so, you're going to have to do some reading on your kid and how they're reacting or not reacting. And see if you may think it's time to bring it up again. If certainly before they go back to school. So if today was your last day like it was ours, then you'll probably need to bring it up sometime in August, if not before then. If you think it's on the news, right? Because it's not like you're going to avoid the news. You're going to get in the car and something's going to be on the radio or something. They're going to walk in while you're watching TV. So again, times to bring.
Sorry, we've got a little connectivity issue there. Okay, so we have another question, which we'll get to in just a minute. Elijah, thank you for your questions. If you guys have any questions below, we are speaking with Brooke. She is more of an expert on this than I am. What do I know? But she is a licensed counselor. I don't have her exact title in front of me. And she's here from Indianapolis, has children in school, just like you and me. And we're just kind of unboxing everything with her right now. We're waiting for her to come back online. But if you have any questions, drop them below. We're going to try to get all of your questions in the next few minutes. If you have anything you want to say, this is a place. This is our community. This is our community chat, and it's definitely been just one of those days that you just didn't think would happen, but you always wondered if it might. At least in my case, and I know that I feel so fortunate that my kids were already out of school, because I don't know what I would do tomorrow, but there's still going to be a tomorrow for me. They're going back in August. And the fact of the matter is, this can happen anywhere with any person. And no one expects this. So we're just waiting for Brooke for a second. Looks like she'll be right back on. We do have one more question in the queue. If you have other questions, you can drop them below. If you feel uncomfortable asking them publicly with your name attached to it, feel free to leave them in the Indy with Kids message box. You can just send us a private message up there, and we will put those up there. So just waiting a minute for Brooke to come back online. But I am so glad that you guys all joined us today. Let me message her real quick and see how we're doing here. But I really appreciate you joining us today. I appreciate Brooke being here to help us with all of this. Some really good questions so far. And let's see, trying to reconnect, she says. All right, so she'll be back on. But if you have any other questions, let us know. Even after this broadcast is over, I am not an expert on this. We don't do parenting a lot, just because I don't feel that that I have that capacity or knowledge, but I'm happy to introduce you all to people that do. So, okay, so here we have a specific question about the Noblesville School District. All right, we'll get to you, Nicole, and we'll get to you, Elijah. If you do have other questions that you don't feel comfortable asking publicly, drop them in the inbox and we'll get you taken care of. We have Brooke back with us. Brooke, let's see, we have you. We have a question here. I'm going to try to find it. It says, it is from Nicole. It says, how do we prepare our children to go back to school on Tuesday in the Noblesville district? I have both a middle schooler and elementary, and I'm a mess thinking about Tuesday. So we did talk about this a little bit. So if you're just now tuning in, that's fine, but we didn't go into depth and we didn't deal with these different ages. So happy to answer any questions you guys have. Nicole, I love that question, and my heart is broken for you guys. I'm scared and I'm not even there. Like, every day is really just kind of a crapshoot what's going to happen to us and to our kids. And so I'm going to let Brooke take over here.
Yeah, specifically in that school district it will be interesting to see what the school district does. If they decide that, you know what, we're going to be done with school, or if they're just going to make this all processing time, which may be very beneficial. Or if they're going to try to continue as scheduled. And so my assumption is that you will be getting a lot of communication over the weekend from the school system. That's an assumption. Maybe the school system isn't very good at communication, but finding out kind of what the plan is and being able to share that with your kids. Like, this is what you can expect. And also reminding them of what did happen today that was good. That when something went wrong, a teacher stepped in, they kept the other kids safe. They were able to move all the kids to a new place. Parents were able to pick up all the children. The last kid was picked up at 3:30 for whatever reason, right? And so everyone is accounted for, everyone's back with their families, and we know that if this happens again, these are the same things that will happen. And that if this happens, I will meet you here. I will make sure I'm there for you. And also seeing just how anxious they may be or may not be. If it's really too much, you know your kid and you know what's too much. But also that they can they will probably want to be together as a community. They will probably want to be with their friends, to kind of that processing thing. And there's this whole piece where kids and adults, we want to be with people who have had similar experiences. And so if this has been really traumatic, it may be even, they may want to be in school with the other kids.
It might be the best place to be at that point. And that's so true. Middle school, you kind of have your tribe a lot by then. And it is very different from processing as an elementary school kid. But all right, we have one more question similar about the area. Elijah says that son, age 7, was excited about his first track meet. Is going to be held at Noblesville Middle School tomorrow, and he has questions, and it makes Elijah nervous to answer these questions. So again, like same location that we're dealing with.
Same location, right? So, review with your child what the safety precautions are. I would assume there's going to be more tomorrow. And also, probably not going to be a repeat in the exact, it's not like a lightning doesn't strike twice thing, but to let them know, these things don't happen. They happen way too much, but it's not like this is every day. And, just trying to reassure them and that you're going to be there. I'm going to be there. I'm going to have my eyes on you. I'm going to take care of you, make sure you're safe, giving them as much reassurance as you possibly can.
Very true. It's
again, they may reschedule things. I would expect a lot of changes happening.
Right. And it's kind of like what they said after 9/11, like the safest time to fly was right after the tragedy. And whether you believe that or not, like it's a nice thing to say to ourselves, So let's see. We have another question here. And I like this one. It's similar to what we answered before, but how can I tell my kids not to be afraid when I'm afraid?
Yeah, I would avoid the words, don't be afraid, right? If you're afraid, it's okay. And if you're afraid, it makes sense. And especially if you're afraid, it makes sense if you're afraid. I am too. So I would let them have whatever emotions that they have, honor those, ask them to share with you about their emotions, so that you can learn more and really start to hear the needs behind all their words and try to get to that deeper stuff for them. And then just assuring them that it's even as you are afraid, these are the things that we can do. Or even as you are afraid, you can count on these things. Allowing them to have their fear and to recognize that fear is something that is trying to keep them safe. And that's okay. And that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
We kind of want our kids to be a little afraid after this. Keep their wits about them, as you say.
Yeah. Stay on guard, stay alert. This says, when should we seek outside help? How bad does it have to be? So what's the...
So that is a great question. Because right now, I think we're even more aware of these kids may need some processing. And in general, I shy away from dragging kids into therapy, right? If they're not motivated, we don't want to make therapy a traumatic thing for them because you forced them there. There's all kinds of ways that can be problematic. So there are some different kinds of therapies and processing that could be more beneficial than others, especially for kids, especially for heavy topics. But if your kid's asking for it, if you say, if you want to see a counselor about this, then we can do that, and they ask for it, then go, right? If they are very emotional, you might make that as an offer and see if they're interested, or say, why don't we, go meet somebody, see what you think. There's not a standard as far as like, this is how bad it has to be.
Right.
And given the situation, you don't even, your kid is going to qualify for some sort of diagnosis that would allow your insurance to cover it. I personally, as a professional, discourage the use of diagnosis and allowing that to be on their long-term record. However, there are things like, given the current situation, it may not be that damaging. But I would certainly encourage parents to look into about, like, do I actually want to use my insurance and have this on my kid's long-term record or not?
Okay. And then you guys, if you have any questions, drop them below. We're just going to go for another couple minutes. Here is the last question I have in the queue. So if you guys want to ask in the comments or send me a private message, if you don't want your name attached to it, that's fine too. But this is the last question I have at this time from the queue. And it says, how can we help kids feel like they're able to make a difference or do something? And I think that's like,
yes,
in every tragedy we've seen that. And even with the other school shootings, like they had walkouts and things. And it wasn't about, in my opinion, like that it actually made a difference or something, but it made kids feel like they could do something. Because I think even as adults, we feel so helpless. So how can we empower our kids, even if it's just a token or a symbol of doing something?
Right. Absolutely. So I would absolutely encourage that. Like, don't just sit in the fear, find a way that they feel like they can do something if they feel strongly about it. And so that could be anything from, if they want to have a bake sale or a lemonade stand and donate the money to something, that's awesome. If they want to write a letter to the legislator, I mean, no one's going to mind getting a letter from a kid. Like, I like getting letters from kids. I think they're adorable. If they want to go to a demonstration, then let them, right? Like, you go with them, be a part of that, make sure they're safe. But if there's, I don't know of anything planned like that, but if there's some sort of demonstration or rally and they feel strongly, like, kids, if they tell you they can handle it, they can probably handle it. That doesn't mean it won't be hard for them, but they will be able to process it.
I'm looking right now. I know you said something about a demonstration. So at Christ Missionary Baptist Church, there is the Moms Demand Action Wear Orange celebration. And this was on the books in the calendar before this happened. This is their annual celebration. And I just knew that I'd heard something about it. It's Saturday, June 2nd. They're having a neighborhood block party to honor and celebrate gun violence survivors and remember their loved ones. They'll have food, games, and entertainment, and it's a kid-friendly event. And they're just asking people to wear orange. It's more about awareness. It's not really like a rally or a demonstration from my understanding, but that might be something kind of interesting if you have a kid that needs something. But you're right there, as far as I know, but this is so soon, and I don't know about anything else planned, and being at the end of the year, it is kind of hard, like the follow-up. And like you said, maybe school is the best place for them to be for the next week. But if they have that severe anxiety, it might just be too hard. Okay, we have another question here. The Noblesville and Texas shootings were done by students. When does a parent talk with their child about what to do if they hear a classmate talking about bringing a gun to school, or they have seen things on that student's social media?
Oh, that's a great question. Now, I have heard about, there have been times where there's suggestions on social media. I haven't heard of, and I try not to watch the news because it's a little overwhelming sometimes, but I haven't heard of any cases where another kid heard about the plan and didn't say anything until later. So that may not be what happens, but certainly, let them know. Like, if if something feels unsafe to you, then you can be the protector by, sharing that with a safe adult. Like, I'm just not sure about something I heard, or this feels kind of weird to me, right? Like, I saw a 13-year-old posted a picture of a gun on Instagram. That feels a little weird to me. And just bring that to attention, and then let the adults handle it. Just if you're feeling uncomfortable, then let me know, right?
Yeah.
And if we've had enough conversations with our kids, they feel like they can ask us questions or let us know those things, then that will be a great way to start. But also giving them other options. If for whatever reason, maybe you're emotional about this, or maybe they think you have an opinion, or maybe they think you just don't like this kid or whatever, but giving them options of other safe adults, right? So, if there's something you can tell mom, but you could also take it to your principal. And maybe not at your school, but at my school or at my kid's school, the principal's a really like safe, supportive kind of individual. So I feel really comfortable saying, yeah, go talk to him. Or here's this other person, or the pastor at the church. These are all, feel free to talk to any of these people that, and that as a parent, they're safe adults, and that your kids can feel comfortable with them.
That sounds like a good idea for this situation and all others, just really to provide your kid with almost like a phone book of people that they can trust and have in their lives. Let's see, we have another question here, and this is, I think, I don't know. Okay, no, I'm not going to have any, but, so it says, doesn't tattling make them a target? I think they mean the kid. They might be afraid of that.
Right. They might be. So, it is important as adults that we are aware of how we discuss things, right? But if something's on social media and it's brought to attention, it's pretty much out there, right? We don't know how it came to attention. And in this case, protecting themselves by sharing is probably a safer option than just waiting, right? Because they could be a target anyway, or they could get caught in the middle.
Right. So, and if I'm sure there's systems in place for this to be done anonymously too. I think that a lot of times we get afraid, like, what if we're wrong? And, we reported this person, and then we're not only a target if it's out, but that the teachers wouldn't take us seriously in the future, even though it may not. I don't know. I think that's going to be something that as a society, we have to kind of learn to balance. Like, it's kind of like when your kids come tattling to you about something where you're like, are you tattling or are you trying to help someone, to where we tell our kids, don't tattle. And in this case, like, tell somebody something.
Right. This really comes down to, safety. This isn't somebody's going to get hurt. They're not going to, they're climbing the tree that they're not supposed to, and they're going to fall and break their arm. Like, This is, kids could die.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, if there are no further questions, we'll give you guys one more minute. Brooke, thank you so much. Can you tell us, here we do have one, just as I said that. All right, guys, put your questions in now. Let's see. Okay. Okay. This is more of a comment, and I like that from Michelle. Let me put this up here. A school admin the other day talked about the messaging to kids as this: we don't tattle to get someone in trouble. We report to keep kids safe. I thought that was really smart. Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. That's a good point. And I think, teaching our kids the difference. There's so many teaching moments wrapped up in this, and it's just unfortunate. It's just all unfortunate. There's nothing good about this, but I liked what you said about trying to find the good in what did happen. And we were, I hate to say the word lucky, but it could have been far worse if not for his science teacher. What a great, I don't know. I can't, sorry. So, yeah, I like that. So, You guys, if you have any questions, drop them below. I'm going to ask Brooke to check back in on the comments later and see if there's anything else that she could take a look at. But Brooke, tell us, where can people find your books and what are the titles again?
Okay, so my books are the Bully book, a workbook for kids coping with bullies, the Loss book, a workbook for kids coping with loss, adoption therapy, perspectives from clients and clinicians on processing and healing. And I can't believe I'm remembering all these long titles.
I had to read them.
And It's Not About You, Understanding Adoptee Search, Reunion, and Open Adoption. And there are links to all of those on my website. So that may be the easiest. They're all on Amazon, of course. But my website is brooke-randolph.com. So BROO. You can type it in. That's easy. I'm so used to doing it when I leave voicemails.
No, let me see if I can get it pulled up here. Brooke with an E, right?
Yes. And then -Randolph.
Okay, here we go. I got it. Should be up now. So they can find you there. Of course, it gave the whole the whole shebang there. But you can find Brooke there. Are you currently accepting patients or children for this sort of situation?
So yes, we are, and for kids and staff who are in that school, I have an associate working with me who's doing some power therapy called Brainspotting, which is something else, that would probably take me another 10 minutes to talk about. But that is really what I would recommend is the best thing to do for these kids. And we're just donating that. So if you're in that school, so if your kids are in that school, staff, let us know, and we're going to just schedule those and help them process through it. It's a really fast and effective process. And even better, kids don't have to talk to us for it to work. And kids like that, they can come and see me and not talk to me and feel better.
There you go. That's good for all of you that had questions about if your kids just don't want to talk about it. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And such a shame under the circumstances. But thank you. And thank you guys all for tuning in. If you ever see a topic or something that you would really like us to discuss, that's how this came about. You all messaged us and said, hey, I don't know how to talk to my kid. What should I do? And I'm not the expert, but I can definitely find one, and we're happy to help you guys that way. So just let us know if there's anything in the future that you guys need, and we'll do whatever we can. You're part of our community, and so happy to have you all. So thank you so much, Brooke, and thank you all for tuning in. Have a great, great weekend, no matter where you are and what's going on.